Everyone who is into cameras seems to be asking the same thing right now. If you're in the market for a Canon EOS body, should you go ahead and buy the EOS R6 Mark II today? Or is it smarter to wait for the rumored EOS R6 Mark III? It's not a simple choice, especially when we're talking about spending thousands of dollars. Nobody wants to buy a camera and then see something shinier, faster, and better just a few months later. Let's break this down in a way that's not just about specs on a sheet of paper, but about real-world needs, budgets, and Canon's not-so-secret plans. Because this decision really hinges on what kind of photographer you are, how urgently you need a new camera, and whether you're willing to wait for a next-generation body that's already stirring up excitement. The R6 Mark II is the camera you can walk into a store and buy right now. It launched with a body-only price around $2,499 and has been a solid, reliable workhorse for many photographers and filmmakers. At its heart is a 24.2 megapixel full-frame sensor. Some people hear that number and immediately think it feels a bit dated in 2025, but resolution isn't everything. For wedding shooters, event photographers, sports coverage, and even birding, 24 megapixels can be the sweet spot. The files are manageable in size, they don't crush your hard drives, and they allow for blazing burst speeds. In fact, the R6 Mark II can crank out 40 frames per second with its electronic shutter, which is plenty for fast-moving action. From the bride walking down the aisle to a soccer player launching a kick. Autofocus is another area where this camera shines. Canon's deep learning autofocus system can track people, animals, and even vehicles with remarkable precision. Many shooters swear by the eye detection feature, which can lock onto tiny birds in flight or follow a subject weaving through a crowd. It's fast, it's sticky, and it's one of the reasons the R6 Mark II remains such a strong performer for working professionals. On the video side, it's no slouch either. The R6 Mark II can output 6K at 60p, oversampled from the full width of the sensor, along with 4000 up to 120 frames per second for slow motion work. With Canon Log 3, you get extra flexibility in color grading, making it a versatile hybrid machine. But while that's impressive, the whispers surrounding the R6 Mark III suggest Canon is preparing to take things to an entirely different level. Before we dive deeper into the Mark III, it's worth acknowledging that the current model does have its shortcomings. Rolling shutter can be noticeable in electronic shutter mode if you pan quickly, and the 24 megapixel count does limit cropping flexibility. That's particularly frustrating for wildlife shooters who want to crop in tightly on small, distant subjects. And these are exactly the pain points Canon seems intent on solving with the next generation. So what do we know about the EOS R6 Mark III? Rumors have been heating up, and the most consistent reports point to a brand new sensor of around 30.3 megapixels. At first glance, that doesn't sound like a massive jump. But in practice, it's a sweet compromise, enough resolution for detailed landscapes and aggressive cropping, but not so high that it kills low-light performance or burst speeds. For wildlife shooters especially, those 6 extra megapixels could make a huge difference when cropping down to a tiny bird perched across the field. Then comes the processing power. Canon is rumored to equip the R6 Mark III with dual DigicX processors, plus an additional accelerator. That's a massive leap compared to the Mark II. What this means is next-level speed, faster autofocus calculations, and new computational features Canon hasn't even teased publicly yet. The possibility of AI-driven subject recognition that learns from your own shooting patterns has been hinted at, and if true, that could make the camera feel like it's evolving with you. It wouldn't just track subjects better, it could adapt over time to your personal style. The body itself is also expected to get small but useful refinements. The LCD may shift to a 3.2-inch vari-angle display with a new tilt-and flip mechanism. That may sound minor, but if you've ever tried to shoot at awkward angles, low to the ground or overhead in a crowd, you'll know why this matters. And now, the big news for filmmakers, the R6 Mark III is rumored to offer 6K RAW recording at 60p. That's a feature you usually expect from cinema cameras, not a hybrid mirrorless body. RAW video gives you tremendous flexibility in post-recovering highlights, pushing colors, and achieving a cinematic look that compressed formats can't quite deliver. It's a game changer if you're producing commercial work, high-end YouTube videos, or even indie films. Alongside that, Canon Log 2 and Log 3 are both expected, extending dynamic range and grading options. Insiders claim that prototypes are already in the hands of select photographers and content creators. Feedback has been described as overwhelmingly positive, which suggests Canon is close to a final product. If the leaks are correct, the official launch could happen in the first quarter of 2026, possibly timed around the CP Plus trade show in February. That's only a handful of months away, which makes the waiting game all the more tempting. Of course, price plays a huge role in the decision. The R6 Mark II hit the market at $2,499, and it's expected that the R6 Mark III will creep higher, somewhere between $2,800 and $3,000. If Canon keeps it under $3,000, it'll remain competitive with Sony and Nikon equivalents. If it edges over that mark, some buyers may start wondering whether to stretch even further for the R5 Mark II. But here's a clever angle. Once the R6 Mark III is announced, the Mark II will almost certainly see a significant price cut. Retailers clearing out inventory could push the price down to $2,000 or even less, making it a fantastic value proposition for anyone who doesn't need the very latest tech. So, what's the right choice? It really depends on who you are and what you shoot. For wedding photographers, the R6 Mark II already delivers beautiful results in low light, clean files at high ISOs, and incredibly reliable autofocus in dim reception halls. The Mark III might be marginally better, but it's not going to transform your images. If you have weddings booked soon, it makes sense to buy the Mark II now and start making money with it instead of waiting. For video-focused creators, though, the calculus changes. If you're serious about cinematic quality, that rumored 6K RAW6OP is massive. It could be worth holding out for the new model, particularly if your projects demand the best possible post-production flexibility. On the other hand, if your work is more casual talking head YouTube videos or Instagram content, the Mark II is already far more camera than you'll ever need. Wildlife and sports shooters face an interesting decision too. The Mark II already gives you blistering 40 FPS shooting and excellent autofocus. But those extra megapixels in the Mark III could be invaluable for cropping, and the boosted AI tracking could mean fewer missed shots of erratic, fast-moving subjects. If you can wait a few months, the Mark III is probably the smarter long-term investment for this kind of work. Then there's the budget-conscious strategy. Waiting for the Mark III announcement and then scooping up the discounted Mark II could be the sweet spot. You'd save hundreds of dollars while still landing a camera that will serve you well for years. Plenty of professionals are still earning a living with the original R6 from 2020, and it's still going strong. The Mark II will remain a capable, relevant camera for quite a while. At the end of the day, both options are winners. The R6 Mark II is proven, reliable, and available now. The R6 Mark III looks poised to be more powerful, more flexible, and more future-proof, but it requires patience and a bigger budget. If you need a camera today, don't overthink it. The R6 Mark II will get the job done and pay itself off quickly. If you can hold out a little longer and want to invest in the latest and greatest, the R6 Mark III is shaping up to be one of Canon's most exciting releases yet. So the real question isn't whether one camera is better than the other. It's about timing, budget, and your personal shooting needs. Buy now if you're ready to work, wait if you crave the cutting edge. Either way, you'll end up with a fantastic tool in your hands.